We see e-com businesses come and go in this industry, but some of them scale and some of them don't. Are you curious of what actually are the hacks of becoming one of this scalable e-com business? We have kind of made a whole scientific approach that we're going to disclose to you in this episode on how you can scale your business, and pretty much we know when you're stuck based on your business profile. This episode is all about your journey and why some succeed and why some fail. And each stage of them has their own obstacles. Like each journey is different. And we know exactly when it's your time to scale and where you get stuck. So welcome with Dayu and myself, Simon, on this Ecommerce podcast. And I think it's going to help tons of D2C brands.
Let's get started then. So, Simon, we worked with tons of dropshipping to e-commerce to large brands, anywhere ranging from 6 figures to 7, 8, 9 figures. I'm sure the audience is really wondering, what is the difference? So how does one scale up from those different levels, and how do you navigate it differently?
That's very interesting because technically we say 6 figure, 7 figure, 8 figure, 9 figure, but actually it's not the revenue that is the obstacle to overcome. Everyone is advertising always about, I have an 8 figure brand, 9 figure brand, 7. It doesn't really matter because your obstacles are not related to your revenue per se. We've actually have defined 3 types of clients. One is the dropshipper, focused on profit, testing new products continuously. 2 is a single brand owner that's focused on branding and the consumer experience, basically what we discussed in the last episode. And then 3 is the multi-brand owner that is thinking of global fulfillment, want to have visibility all across the chain. Technically, we have a 4th one, but that's really the large global multinational brands like these Nikes and Apple and all these, which we don't really consider as our target audience. So we kind of stuck with these 3 client types.
These 3 categories, and look, I don't think that everyone fits perfectly within each one, but I think that these are very clear patterns that we've seen working with, hundreds of very successful brands of different levels, and we see these clear patterns. And the reason why I think that this is really valuable to think about is, like Simon said, it's not about your order volume. It's not about your sales volume. There's literally different stages in the business in the business of dropshipping or e-commerce or retail even, that fundamentally requires very different thought process and different operational mindsets to actually run. Let's dig a little bit deeper then into each one by one.
We're going to take them client type by client type. So let's start with the first one, which is actually like the traditional dropshipper. For me, the dropshipper is the one that wants 3 types of freedom: financial freedom, location freedom, and time freedom. These are the key drivers for majority of the dropshippers. So a lot of digital nomads that live anywhere for a few months, then move somewhere else. They're kind of maximizing life with the experiences that the whole world has to offer. Technically, I'm a fan of dropshipping because I'm a fan of entrepreneurship. And dropshipping is basically your first taste to entrepreneurship, meaning I suddenly have to think about finance, about marketing, about procurement, purchasing goods, about logistics, about customer service. Everything that comes with running a business is all on you to figure it out. And if you've never run a business, dropshipping is a great way. But at some point, you have to find a vehicle to scale. You want to have a vehicle which tends to be a product that's going to help you elevate your game to actually see, I can do this. I can make this a business and it can be a sustainable business. But how do I flip this dropshipping business into something bigger than just me? I think that's one of the key points, the just me part. What do you think?
So yeah, Simon, I actually went through that experience myself. 7 years ago, I started my own custom brand. We had hundreds of thousands of dollars of investor funding, including a lot of my own money as well. We had 2 other partners. We spent 9 months developing a wholly customized product from scratch. We had to pay for inventory, and that was hard. Okay, that was very, very difficult, and I do not necessarily recommend that route for a new entrepreneur. If I had to do it again, maybe dropshipping is something I consider, because as I was kind of struggling to figure out how to market this thing, that's where I actually saw some YouTube videos about dropshipping, and I was like, wow, these kids are making $1 million, right? Supposedly, but you know how it was back in the day with like dropshipping YouTube videos. And I'm like, this is so much easier than what I just did. I actually started my own like kind of travel brand, travel bags. And I went on AliExpress. I built a Shopify store in like a week, and I started selling, and I started scaling up to like $1,000 per day within like a couple of weeks. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So To your point, Simon, like it is, well, now it's a little bit harder, but I still think it's a pretty viable way. If you have no e-commerce experience, no business experience, it is a pretty viable way to get started quickly with very, very little risk. There's a lot of downsides to it though. And maybe Simon, you can continue to speak about some of that and I'll chime in too.
That's kind of why a lot of our clients also ask me, why are you not selling online, or why are you not drop shipping? And that's exactly for this reason. It's not a part-time hustle. If you want to do this well, it's actually really full-time and engaged to be able to build something sustainable. And that, like I said, it's not just you, it's you have to build a team around you. It's about scaling your business and building a team that replaces the tasks that you like doing or maybe dislike doing, which is probably the best to outsource. And it doesn't have to be in the same office. It can be remote, but that kind of thing is scaling your business, is scaling you. What is it that I excel in? What is it that I don't like to do? And then outsourcing these things or focus, narrowing down. Some of our clients are dropshippers, but what we saw, and I've been in the dropshipping space for 3+ years now as well as a kind of like an agent before this, main problem was the quality of the products. It's very hard to control the quality of products. You've done that as well. You've experienced it yourself. If you're buying in bulk, if you buy 50 pieces, 500 pieces, 1,000 pieces, it's much easier to control the quality than if you buy a single piece and expect the warehouse to control that. But you've run this business before and we've pivoted into fulfillment. So I'm sure you have a takeaway on this as well.
Well, so I saw it from both ends. All right. So first, as a drop shipper, I remember, so I always like to travel. So my winning product was a foldable travel bag. And I thought it was really cool. All right. So I started selling it. I started just using like AliExpress videos, Alibaba videos, like everyone did back in the day, and probably a lot of people still do. And it was selling really well. I finally, maybe after 3 weeks of started selling it, I finally got a sample of my own product. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make my own creatives. And there was one specific scene where someone would pour water on the bag and it would like beat up and like, like roll off. And it was like supposed to be waterproof or water resistant. And we put a bunch of clothes in there, our own clothes, and then we poured some water on it and it just soaked immediately through. Like it was literally, it seemed like anti-water resistant. I didn't even know what material it was. That was honestly one of the lower points of my life. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, yes, I'm making money, but like literally I'm telling customers that this is water resistant and it literally is the opposite. That was actually the inspiration for me to start ecom ops at the start. I realized how valuable the dropshipping experience is. I realized that it's really a great way to start a business, but I also realized within all the communities I was in, some of like my dropshipping friends, is that they have all these quality issues, especially when they scale up. They have all these supply chain issues, logistics issues. Their AliExpress supplier can't keep up. When I then started ecom ops, we were still mostly focused as a private dropshipping agent. However, we really focused on telling our clients or working with the clients to move beyond pure dropshipping. And what I mean by move beyond pure dropshipping is, look, you can ship from China and have all the flexibility of doing so. And you can have very little risk, but you don't have to have no risk or no inventory risk. So we started holding inventory for our clients. We started by making sure that we're sourcing high quality products. We would tell our clients if this product is just total crap or totally not good. And we try to maintain a certain level of quality working with our clients. And honestly, we only work with clients at the time who actually have a similar view of quality as us. We would literally turn away clients who just want to use the slowest shipping possible, who just want us to find a product that was like 5 cents cheaper and we knew it was inferior. Because you know what, like especially with all my experience in the day, I knew for a fact that those are exactly the type of dropshippers that would have a ton of order volume for a couple months and then just die down because literally their customers hate the product, right? Because it's terrible and it's like slow shipping and they can never scale beyond that.
I remember you having a conversation last summer with a European client. I think it was exactly this kind of conversation. And now he's one of our top clients just because he listened to what we see as the direction forward. And one of the things was definitely upgrading his quality and reducing the issues with the customer service. But maybe you were there in that conversation.
I do think that especially a lot of more early dropshippers or early in the career, if you're a dropshipper, for example, and you're just watching YouTube videos, you can get the wrong impression that it is very easy. It's not that easy, by the way. However, almost none of these YouTubers talk about the supply chain. Like, there seems to be some perception that things just magically happen in the background. Products somehow show up at your supplier or your agent and somehow immediately gets delivered, right? And like, that's not how it works. There's factories producing it. There's quality control. Your agent doesn't magically have these products transport into their warehouse. They're having products come in. And actually, especially earlier on, when we were talking with some kind of like more traditional dropshipping clients, they would be like, well, I was okay, you have to hold stock with us. And they'll be like, why do I have to hold stock? AliExpress doesn't make me hold stock. Why are you making me hold stock? Well, anyone who hopefully has a little bit of understanding of supply chain realizes why that is actually important. And the outcome is that when traditional dropshippers or their suppliers don't hold stock, that's exactly when sometimes you have like 4 week shipping times. Shipping itself doesn't take that long, especially if you use like a high quality line like UniExpress. Shipping takes like 5 to 10 days to most markets, right? But sometimes it takes like 2, 3 weeks. And that's where a lot of dropshippers, they somehow blame China shipping. No, it's not China shipping. When something takes 3 weeks, it's because your agent or your AliExpress supplier ran out of stock and they need a week to get in more stock, but they don't tell you. And they send you like a fake tracking number. So that's why it seems slow.
It's the unpredictability, right? Because your ads can just pick up and you can suddenly have a lot of orders, and maybe more people, other drop shippers doing the same product, have that same increase in orders as well at the same time, because the timing of the product or the season, that suddenly you run into the squeeze. And I think that unpredictability is also why we see that the type 2 client that we're moving towards is more like the brand owners. A lot of our clients that are doing this used to be dropshippers themselves. So they didn't just start a brand from scratch and magically made it successful. They actually have been through the journey and found out that the unpredictability of dropshipping is something they didn't like. And they actually always dreamt about building something unique, like a unique brand where they can leave a footprint behind as well that impacts and that creates value and become something that obviously makes a profit, but also have something unique within their niche in their space. Do you have any client that comes to mind for you? Like, this is a good case. That's a great example that shifted from drop shipping into this kind of brand owner perspective.
Yeah, of course. Although, of course, Sam, it's our policy not to share our client products. However, there's so many examples of this happening. And, one of the things that I actually do suggest are dropshipping or let's say former dropshipping clients who are moving on to building a brand it's totally fine to test products. Let's say you have a general store or a broad niche store, or even you're just building like one product funnels, right? That's totally fine to do. However, once you actually start getting that winning product, then actually build a brand around it. Now, I don't think it's absolutely necessary that you think about all of the effort and time that you need to actually build a true brand from scratch. I think it's okay to test flexibly, right? Now, I personally believe though that even when you test flexibly, you should still have some care in your customers, like don't scam your customers, still like try to start with, relatively good products. And actually, I strongly suggest even as you're testing, hold some stock. Look, I get the idea of no risk or minimizing risk for dropshipping, right? But why do you need zero risk? If you think about it, like you might be selling like a product that is $1 in terms of just the product COGS before shipping. What is the problem with getting 200 of it? $200? I mean, you probably spend more than that on your marketing campaign, on your creatives, right? So what is the point of worrying about losing $200 or $100 even if you're able to get that batch, that actually means that you or your agent or your supplier fulfillment agency can actually get a batch of the product, feel it, and actually confirm the quality is okay, all right? And also, even at the start, even when you're testing, actually ensure that you have good enough shipping, fast enough shipping, because you actually have stock. That being said, the next step is very doable. You can certainly start drop shipping a product or a type of product, and then when something is working out, then you actually turn it into a brand.
Because for these brands, main obstacles for them to overcome is really you have a winning product, you customize it, you brand it, you have built the whole community, you have the whole experience, that product is doing well. Then what? what am I going to do now? And I think that's where a lot of brand owners are getting stuck. And what we see is that there's several ways to do that. And that's when it comes to scaling your brand. The question is, do you want to scale global? That's an option. If you're focus on English speaking, like we have brands who used to focus on having local stock in the US, and they just lost so much money shipping globally that they said, okay, I'm still going to use US fulfillment, but I'm going to use China for the rest of the world because I'm buying from China already. Or it's actually just, I'm not going to do any local stock anymore because I want to have the flexibility because I keep running out of cash because my brand is growing. And we see that scalability for when it comes to global, or finding that next product that is in line with your brand value to actually create a brand that's more than a single product. That's something that we see like as great solutions when it comes to obstacles. Is also like, let's say you have a product with 3 colors and you have no idea which other colors might be selling well, but you get feedback from clients. Do you have a gray? Do you have a pink? Do you have a orange one? Let's buy 50 orange ones. let's try. Let's just keep a little bit of stock, and it's not an expirational good. If I assume it's not. And so then what's the risk of keeping these 50 in a warehouse in China and ship it from there?
And the other thing that, supply chain and product planning aside, is operationally a kind of drop shipper and someone or brand has also a difference between traditionally a drop shipper is most likely solo entrepreneur, right? It might be one person, or maybe you have VAs, right? Supporting customer service. But typically speaking, many times that's it. I mean, you might have like some creative agencies, you might have like someone who makes logos for you, etc., right? However, most of the time it's really kind of centered around literally one person, which is admirable. It's not a bad thing at all. However, as you start to think about building a brand, it's not only about like expanding different channels, thinking about like just expanding your brand in general, but you really have to start thinking about it's not just you, right? And I know, okay, maybe you have like VAs, right? But it's not exactly the same. It's not just about like adding like bodies, right? It's actually about like running a actually successful brand requires a lot of disciplines, like a lot of different experience sets, everywhere from the front end to like marketing, creatives, to like ad management, to managing your store operations, financial stuff, accounting, all the way to fulfillment and, kind of supply chain management, right? For a real brand. And, if you want to learn more about how we think about real brands, check out episode 2 that we have. Every single touch point matters. Not just the first one, not just how your marketing looks, how your store looks, but your product quality, how your packaging looks, what kind of shipping lines you use, right? The average dropshipper is just not going to have experience along that entire chain. Now, that doesn't mean that you hire a whole massive team that does everything. That's more of that type 3 that we'll talk about soon. But you have to be aware of how the entire chain works, and you have to either do it yourself because you're an expert, so maybe you're great at marketing and you should always just, focus on marketing, right? But where you have gaps, like supply chain management, for example, then you either need to find a partner, or an employee, or maybe work with an agency that you really trust. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that everyone should start their own fulfillment centers. That's where someone like Ecommerce or like any other 3PL fulfillment center comes in. You don't have to start your own warehouse to build a brand, but you need someone to fulfill orders for you. That's not just a drop shipping. That's not just AliExpress.
Yeah, that basically sums up, I think, client type 1 and client type 2, like 1 being the more traditional dropshipper. Obviously, it's not going to cover everyone because everyone is still unique. We know that. So don't start sending us message. I'm not 1, I'm not 2, I'm not 3. But this is kind of to categorize, because even though you might not resemble with one of these, you are going to run into the same obstacles as anyone else. So,
yeah. I will actually just chime in a one other fundamental difference I actually think is the concept of optimizing for LTV. So it is very common in especially some of the earlier dropshipping courses and content. It's all about optimizing for break-even ROAS, return on ad spend, which is, by the way, ridiculous because I come from the traditional retail industry. In traditional retail, It's all about like payback periods. Like how fast can you make back, what you spend on marketing and sales. In traditional retail, if you have a payback period of like 90 days, that's amazing. Like you can fundraise with a payback period of 90 days. 30 days, like you're gonna blow up if you have 30-day payback. No one in traditional retail ever expects or even hopes for a 1 day or even one order payback period. So this is kind of where that traditional mindset of dropshipping is just, it's not sustainable. Now, in the very early days of dropshipping, the golden age of dropshipping, where you could literally just sell any random product and make $1 million, right? That was the case. But that is the wrong way to think about it. All of our successful clients, actually, all of our clients, I believe, or most of our clients, they do not expect literally to be profitable on the first order. They're willing to be break even on future orders. Some of our clients, they know their LTV very well, that they're literally willing to lose tons of money to acquire customers because they know that they're going to make it back on the LTV on the back end. And now we have a lot of talk about LTV, so this will be a different episode. So look out for that. But I think this is a huge difference between a dropshipper, or even I would say that I'm not even talking about pure traditional dropshippers. I even kind of group like those who hold stock or just like simply private label products in that type 1 kind of grouping as well. I don't consider them to be true brands. True brands are all about optimizing for actual LTV. True brands are okay with losing money on the front end, but making it back on the back end. And this is also where, obviously, optimizing for the experience is so important, because the moment that you have a customer that doesn't like your product or thinks it's too slow, you're going to lose that customer. They're never going to repurchase from you again. And no matter what kind of artificial ways you try to get them to purchase again, that's it.
And your business becomes also more reliable because you kind of can predict how many orders you're going to have the next day as a brand owner, because it becomes actually much more sustainable and also much more predictable, which then makes our life much easier running a supply chain and communicating with factories and have an expectation of what's coming. And that's something that whenever these things stabilize, then you're set up for scale. And once there's a lot of fluctuation and variation, then it becomes very tricky to optimize your supply chain, because actually technically you don't know how many you're going to sell next week. So how to predict for it?
Yep. So now let's hear about type 3 clients. So how do you define them, and how are they different?
Yeah, so what else is out there then, right? You think we had this one and two, and now there's another one. For us, we actually think of this type 3. I don't think do we have really a name for it? It's more like a multi-brand owner, we would say, that runs global warehouses and global fulfillment, has, like I said, multiple brands, tends to also actually be a company. So they have really 20 plus people employed. They have a physical office where people come and actually contribute to the company. Sometimes they obviously have still remote teams, but the organization is with departments even. So it's actually an established company running multiple brands. They're leveraging Amazon warehouses, Shopify. They're using all the marketplaces as well. And that brings a lot of complexities. And I think you've talked to all of them. you know their obstacles in that sense. So
Yeah. So I think one very important thing to separate this out is just it's a totally different scale. Like it's like a different dimension of operating, actually. And when we say like they run multiple brands, we don't really mean running a whole bunch of stores. That's not what we mean. It's obviously a very known dropshipping or e-commerce strategy to just, okay, like test a whole bunch of products, ramp up a whole bunch of duplicate stores. I don't consider that to be this type 3. I consider that to be like super dropshippers, right? Just more dropshipping, better dropshipping, all right? Which is fine. There's plenty of people out there who actually make money that way. I will tell you though, especially these days as CPAs go way up and LTV becomes much more important, that model of just duplicating like dropshipping products and efforts and like stores, it's just not going to scale in the future. If you're doing that, I do suggest that you try to actually move away from that and actually build real brands and hopefully build a portfolio. Now, so with this, it's partly about building portfolios, but like Simon said, it is actually a real business, a real company, a real corporation. And when we're just talking about for number two, the type two type of clients or brands, type two clients, e-commerce brands, D2C brands, it is really important for you to actually understand how the entire chain works. But likely you're hiring agencies, you're working with partners, right? Contractors, etc. However, typically, once you get to the next level, you actually need to start building more in-house. Because when you get to the next level, then your connection with your customers for various brands, or even if you just have a massive brand, it becomes ever more important. And that means that a lot of the things that you tended to outsource before is not going to be at the level of quality or care that you can actually do yourself. And I obviously don't mean yourself, but have in-house. Our largest clients, they have entire office floors. They have hundreds of people in various different departments operating different things. Now, that does not mean that you move in-house for everything. Our largest clients, they still use us for China fulfillment. They still use other 3PLs for US fulfillment, for EU fulfillment. If you're running like an e-commerce brand or portfolio, it is not necessary for you to have your own warehouse. I will tell you that, because it's a totally different ballgame, and you should be focusing on what you do best and not running your warehouse and distracting what you actually are good at. And they have different fulfillment centers. They hire great teams as opposed to just having EAs. They actually have an entire office in the Philippines that now technically, well, by that point, they're not really VAs anymore. I mean, they literally just have a customer service department that just happens to be in the Philippines. And they physically go into the office and manage them. And they're run like real businesses. And hopefully one obvious outcome of that is that they also scale like real businesses. They also maintain their sales like real businesses. A lot of you probably dream of making 8 figures, or maybe even dream of 9 figures, right? You don't need to make 9 figures from one product. You can make 9 figures from 10 8-figure products added together. And that's exactly what a lot of our biggest clients do.
Exactly. And that's kind of also the game of where we want to bring our clients towards, right? We want to actually educate our clients to first build an established brand, and secondary is to start replicating that with other brands to be able to actually have that global impact, but also have a sustainable business for the long term. And it brings a lot of obstacles. And these obstacles, that's what the podcast is all about, is when it comes to these type 3, if you just imagine, just let me paint a picture, because it's sometimes hard to imagine. Let's say you have a warehouse in the EU, in Europe, in the US, and in China, and you're getting 50 orders from the UK, and your warehouse is in Germany, and you only have 20 pieces left in Germany. Where are you going to ship the other 30 from? Is it from the US? Is it from China? Or are you going to wait until it arrives in Germany and you're going to fulfill that later? That brings a lot of complexities that if you run these warehouses separately from each other, or if you run these stores separately from each other, or you might have multiple stores for selling the same product, it becomes very complex to have this one overview of how to actually run the day-to-day business. And I think that's one of the challenges that we see for these brands, these global merchants, multi-brand owners, on how to optimize their supply chain. And software and integration, I think, is the key. And that's also the direction, right, for us, that we heavily invested in the past few months, a year plus even.
Yeah. And there's 2 points to that, actually. So the first point is control. When you are a solo entrepreneur, you're doing everything. So technically, you kind of have all control, I suppose, right? Now, as you build a brand, it is wise to start working with the right partners, right? Now, the wrong way to think about it, and this starts at the type 2 type of clients, by the way. The wrong way to think about it is somehow they're going to solve all your problems and you can just focus on marketing and nothing else. That is the wrong way to think about it. That is exactly one of the ways that your brand can get limited or implode before it scales, because you can't just trust your partners to solve your problems, right? So the example that Simon said is, okay, let's say that you have multiple brands, you have multiple warehouses. Those kind of businesses, they don't come to us and tell us, help us figure out how we can send stock to the US, and then how do we move this stuff around, and how do we, like, where do we send this and this? No, that's the wrong way to think about it, because the thing is, like, we are great at fulfillment, But how are we going to help you figure out like when do you ship orders from the EU versus when you ship orders from China or the US, right? However, what we do and what you should be looking for in your fulfillment agents, or I guess any other service that you actually do use, is information and data. And how do you act on that data? So for what we do, for example, is we don't just provide you with a Shopify app. We also have that, by the way. But for our largest, more complex clients, we develop direct API integrations with them, directly with their systems. And by the way, when I say systems, is as people scale up, as brands scale up, no one uses Shopify in its entirety of the funnel. As they scale up, they're either using some kind of fully custom backend or some kind of platform. That's the only way to do it. But that also creates a challenge where then whatever services you're using, whether it's fulfillment or anything else, they need to know how to work with your system. So, this is where we focus on getting that integration, getting that back and forth, order management done, and also providing our clients with the right information so that they can actually make the right decisions on their behalf and have a level of control of their brand and all their brands, which is, again, very, very important for making sure that you maintain that experience for your customers.
Yeah, so we check in with the clients regularly, some weekly, some monthly, some quarterly, just to be able to, whenever there is a global out of stock situation, we can help them, right? But also whenever there's a plan of launching a new product that they might want to have, then what's the plan? When can we receive the goods? When we can expect them to be in our warehouse? And also when our orders going to be coming in to us? And we had a client once that suddenly ran a campaign and that scaled and he had 60,000 orders and we were not aware. We suddenly saw these orders coming in. We're like, oh, okay. And it's fine. I mean, China has the flexibility to deal with this. It's good, but it's gonna take a few days for us to deal with that fact, which is already much faster than most warehouses globally to scale up resources, material, and everything that comes with it. But it's just not necessary. If you have a proper plan and you're sharing that plan with partners like ourselves, then you also have to stay visible and asking the right questions to become part of their plan. And I think that's also really the collaboration that we look for with the clients. And hopefully also they see us as part of that collaboration. And they see us as a group of people that are going to enable their growth. And that's something that is so valuable to us that we're lucky, we're blessed to have tons of clients that we have built this relationship with. And they trust us completely 100% and vice versa as well. Whenever they have a good idea, so it's good, let's implement this. Because it's not about us saying how to run the business, nor is it them saying how we should run the business. It's about sharing where we get stuck and looking for the solution and software and planning and optimizing your global presence in warehouses. And sometimes we need to suddenly step up a little bit because in Canada they run out of stock. But then suddenly they're stuck again in Canada. So we need to shut it down and make sure we're not fulfilling the orders that otherwise are going to be fulfilled twice. It is continuously alignment, and it's not just purely the data and information, but it's also the communication.
Yeah, so communications is so important. And actually, that is one of the other key differences between the 1, 2, and 3 type of clients as well. A traditional dropshipper usually doesn't want to talk to their suppliers at all. Again, there is this misperception that somehow magic just happens and the products just show up at the customer's door. And most, if not almost pretty much all of the original kind of dropshipper clients that we had years ago, they were surprised that we would get on a call with them. They were like, I've never talked to my agent before. And I was like, well, that's amazing. That's incredible.
Video call even, right?
Well, I mean, any kind of call. I mean, they just chat, I suppose. And that's incredible to me. And then as the clients mature, as they kind of build a brand, they start to realize, okay, look, or actually we even tell them, look, I don't care if you don't want to talk to us. We need to talk to you. You know what I mean? We need to know what your plans are. We need to tell you that you're out of stock. So you need to restock. Obviously, if we tell them they ignore us, then it's not our fault, right? But you should be listening, whatever level you are. Now, as a type 2, I think that's where they start to get it. And there becomes that mutual communications, that mutual planning, that mutual partnership and collaboration. Now, as for a type 3, these large brands and portfolios, the stakes get really high. If you're making 9 figures per year, Well, that means that if something goes wrong, you could potentially not make 9 figures per year, right? Which means the stakes are super high. So actually, our largest clients, well, even if we don't want to talk to them, they're going to want to talk to us. We proactively, again, whether we like it or not, well, we want to because we know it's the best way to do things. Whether we like it or not, there's constant communications on so many various things because, I mean, they might be working with us on 5, 10 brands. So each brand has its own issues along the entire chain, and each brand or, like each step of the chain, they have their own departments that it's their entire job sometimes just to talk to us. So this is where the level of communications and partnership and collaboration gets ever more important and higher stakes as you, whether you shift from type to type or just as you scale, generally speaking. And I would even suggest, even if you're dropshipping right now, even if you're like the best dropshipper in the world, talk more with your agent, like plan more with your agent, because I guarantee you that that's going to reduce your issues. For these type of companies that are so high stakes that they could literally not make 9 figures anymore or lose a lot of money, this is where also for type 3 clients, the idea of risk becomes much more important. And actually in different and sometimes opposite ways as well. On the one hand, they have much higher appetite for risk. And they need to be. These are the exactly kind of companies that they're okay with losing money on the front end. They're okay with losing money for 15 days, 30 days, because they know that they're able to make it back. So they take much bigger risks in terms of having an initial order of 5,000, to start with. They take much more risk in terms of much more significant marketing spend, even at a loss, because they know that they can make it back. So on the one hand, they're much more willing to take that risk. On the other hand, though, in certain ways, they need to manage their risk and not bring down their business or hurt their customer base, right? So there are also the type of companies that are doing things like considering much more legitimate ways to deal with duty and VAT, which we'll talk about in another topic. They're doing things like actually having more legitimate business structures. They're doing things like building out much more customized platforms to optimize for their customer experience while making sure that they're paying taxes and kind of adhering to the right regulations in each country as well. So there's going to be a whole other slew of topics to talk about, things like that, like how do you become more of a legitimate company and minimize your risk. But, that is one of the important things that I also see in a type 3 client, especially versus a type 1 or type 2.
Yeah, it's fun. We learn so much from this, all of three of them, and they're still interchangeable. So the learnings that we take from one can be applicated in all of the others, and that makes it so fun. But they do have a very distinct obstacles, and I really hope that you have a better picture of what your obstacles might be. If you don't, we have an ebook that you can download in the link below that's going to help you to set you up for scale and help you overcome these obstacles. Also, feel free to reach out to Dario or myself. We're on LinkedIn, other social media as well. For me, LinkedIn is definitely the best channel to reach me. And we would like to help you actually scale your business. And we tends to have a more hands-on approach. And fulfillment itself is one thing, but actually to look at the foundation of fulfillment and then elevating this and replicating that to actually help you build a brand portfolio. That's the dream. And we would love to be part of that dream and help you in that journey. That's what excites me. I don't know about you, Dai, but that's what got me going.
So yes, I do agree. I think that, again, this is not a perfect structure. Not everyone necessarily or every brand fits in any one bucket, but I hope this does bring everyone some insights with a valuable framework so that you can think about where you lie into each of these buckets. And it's not going to be a perfect solution, but I personally think that the best way to solve a problem or any kind of obstacles is actually identify what the obstacles actually are, right? So if you are running a 6-figure store, 7-figure store, whatever it may be, and you feel stuck, it may really not be, and it's probably not because you are doing something necessarily wrong with your current strategy. And maybe there is literally a limit in what you can do with your current setup. And you really have to think about reframing. Okay, I'm stuck as a dropshipper. Then how do I reframe my thinking and operations so I can build a real brand? You're stuck with one brand. Well, how do you actually scale into potentially multiple brands and, kind of scale into a real business as opposed to just a brand owner? And for the type threes out there, how can you be Nike in the future? How can you be Shein out there? But that's a topic for another time.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope we have clarified your obstacles and helped you to become multi-brand owner of a portfolio of brands. That will be fun. We really appreciate it if you like this episode, if you share it with others that they think is valuable. We're gonna share a lot more about the e-com ops, the e-commerce operation. That's our podcast. That's what we're all about. If you want to know more, look us up, and see you on the next one.